Hello, Think Liberty Network listeners. This week on Tales from the Shire, I sit down with an active participant in the Free State Project named Gabi. She and I talk about community within the Liberty Movement and specifically focus on the Free State Project. We dive into non-political forms of activism, and we also dive into a little bit the advantages of growing up in a libertarian household and in a libertarian community. Please enjoy episode 2 of Tales from the Shire. All right, hello listeners. I'm sitting down with one of my good friends, Gabi. She is also a member of the Free State Project here in New Hampshire, and I wanted to sit down today with her and talk about her role in the Free State Project and the community of the Free State Project in general, and talk a little bit about how this can expand to the sense of community within the libertarian community in general, and maybe hopefully encourage people to do similar things where they are, or maybe come here. Gabi, can you talk a little bit about what brought you here to the state of New Hampshire and what got you involved in the Free State Project?
Yeah. Well, hello, AJ.
Hello.
I moved here in New Hampshire to be a part of the Free State Project back in July of 2018. So I had my move-anniversary this past summer. And I moved because I was at a point in my life where I wanted a career change. I just graduated from graduate school, so I was really ready to launch my career as a young professional. So I almost could go anywhere in the country, but I wanted to go somewhere where I knew I could ground down, lay some roots, and build community. And I heard of the Free State Project back in 2011 when I was first exploring libertarianism. And I heard about it, and it's always been on the back of my mind, like, oh, it'd be cool to move there. I don't think I ever will, but it's always an option. And then last year, around my 24th birthday, actually, it kind of hit me like a major reality check, kind of like it's now or never, and I got to live my life, do what's best for me, and I decided to pack my bags and move.
Awesome. So then did you not have a job before coming here? I know we don't have to talk about what it is that you do for work, but like, did you have a career planned out coming here, or was it complete spur of the moment? Like,
that's a good question. So ironically, I was actually going to work in a government program right before I moved here. And I had a really big cognitive dissonance with who I was becoming, the type of people I was hanging out with. So I was actually I was signed up to do AmeriCorps for a year, which is like a volunteer government-funded program, and I was going to work at a community food initiative center. And I realized, why am I volunteering for a government organization when it doesn't really align with like who I am? Like, the organization I really liked, but I was like, I'm not going to be happy getting my paycheck from the government. And so I dropped that. Like, I had a month before my contract with them, and I was like, I need to do something differently. So you came to New Hampshire hoping to find work and hoping to find friends, and that's pretty wild. Yeah, and so I was very strategic with my move, though. It's not like I came here without any plans. What I ended up doing is I made the decision to move, and I definitely was probably one of the hardest decisions in my life, because I've never, like, I felt bad. Like, I agreed to this commitment and then it changed. And so I felt bad about that, but I wanted to be closer to my mom. My mom lives in Connecticut, so I had family up in New England. And I also made sure I had a job before I actually moved up here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I actually never signed anything, so I never had that, like, oh, I'm going to disappoint people if I don't show up, or had that nagging sense of obligation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I didn't sign anything, so that I wouldn't have that. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your activism now that you're here and what you do with the project?
Yeah. Yep. So I should probably say I did sign the pledge to move here back before I moved. So that was in June. I signed the pledge. That's on the Free State Project website, fsp.org. And
June of 2018?
2018.
Okay.
Yep.
So like a month before you came here.
Yes. I knew if I'm going to sign something, like move here, I need to sign and follow through. And so as I was signing that pledge, I was like, okay, if I sign this, that means I need to get involved right away. So I moved here in July. End of July, I had the welcome wagon come to my new apartment. They unloaded my car. And I automatically felt this sense of belonging. And I went to a few meetups early on, first thing I met people. I wanted to get an idea of what kind of people were in the community, what opportunities were out there. And the first thing that I got involved with, I think, was I went to a couple of sine waves because Carla Garrick was running.
Carla Garrick is a former head of the Free State Project. She runs for the state senate every 2 years against a guy, Lou D'Alessandro, an incumbent Democrat who has been hard to get out. He calls himself, I think it's the Lion of the Senate, something like that. It's ridiculous. But we keep pushing Carla to win that. She typically runs as a Republican. Last time around did a fusion ticket, actually, running as a Libertarian and a Republican. But so you ended up working for her.
Well, not working for her, but I was at a sine wave.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so I went to her sine wave. Carla is awesome. I just got to say that. She is a great role model for this community. I went to that. So that's an easy form of activism. I think if someone is not sure how to get involved with politics, I think a very easy way to do that is just holding a sign and getting people's attention that way.
Okay. Well, I guess the interesting thing to bring up is that this community is not really just politics. And so having you on this show is a little different than what I think typically exists on this network, where it is very politics oriented. And so have you done any type of activism outside of just the realm of politics with the Free State Project?
Yeah, so as a participant of the Free State Project, I've also helped out with Liberty Forum. I facilitated the kids yoga at last Liberty Forum. That was kind of fun, the first time I was teaching yoga with little kids. And then I also tried to sell student tickets for Liberty Forum, but that did not go so well for me. I had
a conversation with Rachel Goldsmith, who's the current head of the Free State Project, about those student tickets. I tried to get one. She would not let me have one. My argument was that since I'm a student of life, I should be allowed to do this. And she said, well, what classes do you go to? And I said back to her, I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast pretty often. And she said, she asked me for an essay and a paper on certain theses of his. And I was just like, okay, this is not worth it. I'll just pay the full price.
Yeah.
So that's fun. So Liberty Forum, for those of you that don't know, is this annual forum that we have at a hotel in downtown Manchester. Actually, this year I think it's going to be in Londonderry or maybe just outside of downtown, on the south side of Manchester. Either way, we have speakers and people come in. It's very similar in feel to like a YALCon or something like that, but not just students. Families and everyone else show up. And I think that's what I was driving at when I asked about non-political activism. The whole community sense of thing. So Liberty Forum, you helped organize that. What do you like about Liberty Forum?
Yeah, what do I like about Liberty Forum? So last year was my first Liberty Forum, and I didn't know what to expect going into it. I was just like I've been to Gal Cons, Gal Summits, Liberty Con, a whole bunch of different libertarian conferences in the past. And I went in with an open mind. I had no idea if it would be cool or just as cool as these other conferences I went to, but I was actually really impressed. I think Liberty Forum is a little bit more unique than other libertarian conferences I went to. Previously, a lot of people like dress very professionally, and there's like this overall conference vibe. And I think Liberty Forum has that, but it's very like everyone's an individual. Like I see individuals when I walk into Libertarian, like with LibertyCon, and that hasn't always been the case sometimes. I don't know if that made sense.
All right.
I can expand on that too if you'd like me to.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So Liberty Forum was actually a blast this year because Maj Toure was there from Black Guns Matter, and I've been wanting to see him for a few years now. And so it was really refreshing, I should actually say rejuvenating, to see him speak because he is a phenomenal public speaker. And he talked about evolve or die and how our message does kind of need to evolve as society evolves. And even though we're always going to be pro-liberty, how can we communicate our ideas that are effective to build community and pass our ideas down from generation to generation? So I loved his presentation there, and that made my whole weekend.
That made your whole week. Yeah, I think that made a lot of people's weekend. He's a really good speaker. For those of you that don't know, Maj Toure is the founder and operator of Black Guns Matter, which is I think the best way to describe it is like an inner city gun club, and he travels the country showing people that live in inner cities. It's mostly black people, but he says in his interviews that it's not focused on that, which is probably accurate. Then he teaches people how to go purchase guns and use guns wherever they are. And now he's running for City Council of Philadelphia as a libertarian. So if you're in Philadelphia, go work on that campaign. All right. So, but you've also been involved in a whole bunch of outreach programs for the FSP as well. Can you talk about that and what you get out of that? Yeah,
so for the FSP, I also volunteer and help run what they call calling parties. They're like phone-a-thons where we outreach the signers who went on the FSP.org website and signed the pledge to declare that they plan on moving to be a part of the Free State Project. We give them a call. One calling party, we had over 500 people we called. And it's great because even though we usually leave out voice messages and we don't connect with people, when we do connect, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so great to hear from you. Tell me about the FSP. And, I ask them, when do you plan on moving? Have you come to Pork Fest? And there's a lot of great dialogue, and it's been refreshing to know that there's people all around the country who are for ideas of liberty, but they either want to stay where they are or they are seriously thinking about moving here. And it's just nice to know that libertarians, liberty-minded people, we're everywhere, even though it doesn't feel that way sometimes.
Okay. So then do you have, maybe you don't, do you have any plans in the future for any other projects you might be doing for the Free State Project?
Yeah, so we'll probably be doing another calling party within the next few months. We hope to do that. And I think we might consider that it's more of a long-term thing. I know they've done calling parties in the past. But I think it will be good if we continue to reach out to people and build those connections. I've also reached out to people over social media too, just to touch base with them to see when they plan on moving and what the FSP can do to help them make that decision. When it comes to the future, I'm not really sure. I more so see my role as supporting.
Okay.
So if Rachel Goldsmith or someone else in the community that really wanted to help out the FSP, I've been working with Chris a lot with that. She always has great ideas. So I kind of am here to help in any way I can help.
Awesome. All right. So you brought up PorcFest at one point in time. You were asking people if they've been to PorcFest. So actually the way I got introduced to this network, Caitlin had me on her show and immediately after PorcFest, and I got to talk to her about what that was. So if you're interested, go back and listen to that podcast because PorcFest is pretty nuts and pretty amazing. But it really drives home what PorcFest is it really shows and drives home how great the community here is in New Hampshire. And I'm hoping that in this discussion we can talk about what it is that makes it that way, what it is that makes New Hampshire the way it is and the Free State Project the way it is, and see if maybe other people can't learn a little bit from that. Gabi, what is it that you like about the community here that you maybe didn't expect to find here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I moved here, I kind of expected to meet people who were very introverted and kind of stayed in their own shell and strongly opinionated, I would say. I think there's a lot of libertarians, including myself, that are very high-strung and have strong opinions. But when I moved here, that really wasn't the case. I think most of the people I've met, even if they would say that they're more introverted, we are all very social. So it is odd. Because you've self-identified to me as an introvert a number of times, and I'm very confused by that. Or I have been confused by that. I understand that just because someone is social doesn't make them an introvert. The introvert-extrovert spectrum is very weird. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, well, not weird. It's complex, and there's a lot to it. Yeah. I do have to say, being here for a year, I'm less and less of an introvert. So, when I moved here, I was the kind of person who you could leave me alone for a whole week. Before I moved here, I would, be by myself. I didn't have a roommate for a month, and I could be left alone. And now, being here a year, all the friends I've made and the connections and how, because I feel like I'm such a large part of this community now, I'm I can't even go a day by myself. Sometimes I'm oh, I have some free time. Why don't I hang out with one of my libertarian friends? And it always, I have so many friends now that I couldn't have ever imagined. I never thought in my life that I would have the problem of having so many friends and not enough time in my schedule. It's
weird. It's weird coming here and having as many friends as one does. I've seen a number of different places. Well, I shouldn't say a number of different places. I've read somewhere about how the loneliest people in society are typically single individuals, oftentimes, usually men, even more so than women, that are in their 20s to 30s. And it's I don't know, I probably have 20 or 30 very close friends just in this community that's any point in time we can go talk to people. Actually, it was amazing. Just on Saturday, about 15 of us went up and hiked Mount Monadnock?
Yeah.
And you were there. Monadnock is this very, very popular mountain in the southwest corner of New Hampshire. And about 15 of us from the local Free Stater community in Manchester just drove over there Saturday morning and hiked it. And it was weird. It wasn't like put together super far in advance. It was just like people sent out texts and just kind of showed up and did it. Like, it's very hard to imagine being able to do that in a lot of other community spaces. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so anyway, you've also been lucky enough here in New Hampshire to have found like the love of your life, basically. You're engaged at this point in time.
Yes, I am.
Congrats on that. That's been a month or two now?
That was end of July, so yeah.
Okay.
2-3 months.
Right. And so what has it been like, you find this sense of community with a group of people. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, obviously there's something much greater in that particular relationship. How good is it to find someone inside the Liberty community?
This is a great question. This is great. So my fiance and I actually talk about this every now and then, because he moved here 3 years before me, and he's kind of told me like, oh, I feel like I've been waiting for you since I got here. And
he has made that joke with me several times as well.
And for me, it was kind of the opposite. I got here, the first meetup I went to, I met him. Even before I moved here, I came up here for a job interview, and I went to a meetup just to scope out the crowd. And I met him, and I remember looking at him and being like, damn, he's someone I want to know. And 2 months later, I move, and I see him again at this meetup. And yeah, we just hit it off right away. So him and I kind of have this joke where if you are a young woman looking for a significant other or a partner, specifically a male partner, you can pretty much have your top pick.
That is entirely accurate. I don't know how many female libertarian listeners I do have, but if you're struggling to find someone, New Hampshire is probably a good place to start. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's great. He actually was on the Monadnock trip as well. So one of the interesting things that I love about this community is that it's really not just politics driven. And I mentioned this before, but we didn't really dive into all of the other avenues that people go, because libertarian activism is not simply showing up people's doors and knocking and asking them to vote. It's also starting your own business, starting a family, and educating certain ways. Using different technologies to transfer, wealth or money, depending on what you want to call Bitcoin, and all of that. And that's been one of the more incredible things about this place, is how much all of that is done, and how almost apolitical a large portion of the community is. Have you found it to be very similar to what I'm describing?
Yes, spot on. And something that is important to bring up is the Free State Project isn't a political organization. Like, they don't sponsor. Is that maybe the word?
They're not affiliated with any type of party. They're not affiliated with any campaigns. Things like that. Actually, most of the liberty organizations in New Hampshire, while it's all the same people who make it all up, are technically not affiliated with each other in any way. Like,
it's very decentralized.
Yeah, like Merrimack Valley Porcupines is not affiliated with the Praxium is not affiliated with the Free State Project, is not affiliated with the Liberty Republicans, is not affiliated with the Libertarian Party. Like, it's... But a lot of the people... There's a lot of crossover, you know. It's wild. All right, so I guess we should dive into PorcFest a little more and talk about the community that's there. We touched on that very briefly and talk a little bit about the microcosm that is PorcFest and where you see all these things. Because I brought up that activism's not just politics, and you can see it in all these other avenues, but then you really start to see it again, even amongst like children at PorcFest, right? I don't know if you saw the kids with the wagon at PorcFest, but there were kids that just walked around selling snacks at like 11 p.m. when they knew everyone would be drunk and buying snacks. Like, because kids in this community are taught a certain way from a young age, they're, I think, a little bit more entrepreneurial than other kids. And I think that's kind of amazing. Yeah.
It's totally true. Yeah, it's totally true that seeing kids come out of their shell, or I should say, yeah, kids, children, young people come out of their shell and market their products like a adult would is actually really impressive, because if you were to go in a school building, you wouldn't see any of that. That would actually be totally disencouraged. So I also thought it was very liberating to see these children just walking around freely.
Yeah,
you know, like they knew their parents.
There's a campground up in the White Mountains. And once a year for about a week, kids just walk around it like 5 to 12-year-old kids just walk around with no one watching them. Like, obviously, if they're in trouble, they can talk to anyone for any kind of help. But yeah, there's an incredible sense of community.
And they're free range, but they're able to be that way because they have the communication skills to talk to adults, like you were saying. And there is that sense of community where I knew like at least 30 or more % of the people at PorcFest. Like everywhere I looked, I knew someone. And the fact that I knew someone showed that this community is so large but so small at the same time. And so it's really safe. Tight-knit. Yeah, it is safe for kids to walk around and do as they please because they probably know someone if they run into them. Right.
So you mentioned that you think the kids are, you said like a little smart. No, it was an ability to communicate better. Right. I have found that to also be true with the kids here. And I think it's kind of incredible how the way a kid thinks when they're raised by libertarian parents is so very different than the way kids were when I was growing up. I wasn't raised by libertarian parents. And sometimes I get very jealous of that. Yeah, because it's not just like they can communicate things to you and they understand how to ask questions and they understand all these different boundaries that most other kids know. But they're way more independent in all of it.
Self-sufficient.
Yeah. Right. So are there any aspects of this community that I'm missing when I'm talking about what forms of activism there are and what forms of...
Yeah. So I think you've talked about politics or being apolitical. There's also, I think you mentioned this as well, entrepreneurial. Being an entrepreneur, starting up your own business or supporting businesses within the community are a great way to support ideas.
It's pretty wild. I think you could probably get, I don't know about 100%, but you could probably get pretty close to doing business with just free staters in New Hampshire and get by. There are free staters who rent property. There are free staters who own a farm. There are free staters who sell soap. I don't know if we have people to make clothing, but
they were at PorkFest. So.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So I think we have a good variety of businesses here, but that doesn't mean it ends. There's always new ideas that can be implemented.
Okay. So in your mind, what is the societal change or the main goal of having all these things and doing all of this stuff outside of just the political realm, where it's like, all right, if a law gets changed a certain way, society changes and I'm a little bit freer. Mm-hmm. What do you see the benefit in doing these other things outside of, just affecting law?
Yeah, so my philosophy, and this kind of speaks to my approach as a libertarian, is to live and let live and be free. And so I kind of I understand that we have government, we have institutional structures that overrule us, but for me to stay sane in the current society that we exist under, I usually forget those are there. I respect that they're there for now, and I acknowledge that they're there, but I also kind of just put that on the very back of my mind, and I don't function based on that parameter. And so I try to live my life every day. I ask myself, how can I be more free? And I try to do just a little thing every day that makes me feel more free. Some days it's just doing my early morning yoga routine. Some days it's having the cup of coffee in the middle of the day when I just don't want to do more work, but I know I got to push through. So the freedom is having that cup of coffee. And then other days, my freedom is going on a hike or hanging out with friends, just spur of the moment. And so I just try to live in freedom. And I think if more individuals try to live freely, we together then can have more power to break through the barriers that these government structures put in place. So I kind of have the philosophy of be free first, and then we all can be free together.
That is really well put. All right, I guess we're coming towards the end here. Do you have any recommendations for people who aren't here and can't come here, but want to be a little more free in their life and want to have a little bit more of a sense of community within the libertarian movement? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So first off, of course, I would say check out the fsp.org page and join some of our social media groups. There's plenty of Facebook pages that you can join. If you aren't on Facebook, I think we're on Instagram and Reddit. We have a couple of different... You could probably find people within our community that are on various websites. So I first off would say try to speak with someone who already lives here in the Free State Project, see what they're doing. And it doesn't mean that having these connections to New Hampshire, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move or should ever feel obligated to move, but it's the fact that you have this connection of freedom. And we're hoping to grow and foster freedom here in the Free State, but freedom should exist everywhere. It's almost like people have been fighting for freedom around the globe for centuries. Mm-hmm. And so this war to fight for freedom is never going to end. Like, being human, we're constantly going to want more and more freedom to be free and to reach our fullest potential. So my recommendation is to build connections. And if you want to stay where you're at, you have no plans to move to the Free State, go you. But see if you can find people within your state or your county you could talk about these ideas, because we're at a place right now in our culture where people aren't comfortable to talk about these things that really matter. Mm-hmm. And they do matter.
That's good. Yeah. No, it is actually talking about things that you can't talk about. It is actually great, the number of conversations that you can have in this community that are so far outside of things you can just talk about, in normal society, right? With coworkers or with friends who are outside of the liberty movement, like maybe it comes up one day at the bar and then there's a debate about, well, should you carry a gun or not, or should guns be legal? And now in this community, it's, do you open carry or pocket carry or drop carry? Do you keep a bullet in the chamber or not? Do you keep the safety on or not when you carry? Like, I'd much rather be having those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people here don't look at you weird when you talk about unschooling or homeschooling. They don't.
There's that automatic connection. So when you already care about the same things like free speech, gun rights, school choice, all of that, educational choice, you have this solid foundation already. And so you can dive much deeper into conversation. Like, I think the most interesting conversations I've had here have actually had to do with like religion, because we have so much diversity when it comes to religious and spirituality within the community. And like, I guess we do believe in religious freedom. So we can start off like, I respect you for you believing in what you believe, and I think you can respect me for having the right to believe what I believe. And so we're able to debate, not necessarily debate, but like have this dialogue that's much more interesting.
Yeah, the religious freedom one is a big one. There's a lot of support within the religious community. Well, because we have a lot of friends here in Manchester. A few people go to one church on the west side or one church over here. A bunch of people are atheists or agnostic or not religious in any way. And so it's interesting when I get to talk to people. I really enjoy talking to people about the Bible. I don't want to dive into that here, but there's several people who are very learned on that particular subject, and you can dive very deep and go into different like translations and things. People here are so smart about so many things outside of just libertarian philosophy and whatever they do for work. Like, yeah. But as far as that support goes and as far as those communications goes, like, I feel like people can be a little closer here without judgment and a little bit more supportive here without judgment. Well, because there actually was this moment at PorkFest. There was a group of maybe 15 or 20 of our friends who were sitting around this fire pit, fire's going, and Gabi actually started going around the circle and just saying, like, overwhelmingly nice things about people. PorkFest is a place for a lot of self-reflection. Obviously, you go listen to speakers and whatever else, and you go network with activists and whatever else, but you're still up in the mountains for a week, and there's a lot of self-improvement that goes on there. Are you up to talk about that?
Oh, of course, yeah. I love PorkFest, the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Yeah, it was my first PorkFest, so I had a super phenomenal, fantastic, whatever wow word I want to say, because of what you said. It was a lot of self-reflection, community building, analyzing who am I as an individual, who am I in this community, and who am I in society in general. And it's the perfect space to do that because, like you said, you're in the White Mountains. It's beautiful. Like, anywhere you go in New Hampshire is always beautiful, but up there at Rogers Campground, you can look at the White Mountains, and it just takes your breath away. So you're already in this environment with nature, and nature has a way of, it has like this healing component. And so you're already out there in nature, away from technology. I didn't have my phone on me for most of PorkFest, and I think that helped. I had it every now and then to just communicate with friends, but having my phone away allowed me to really be present with the people I was hanging out with. So that helped. And then the fact that it was this highly populated event where there were more people present than usual that were liberty-minded in one area emphasized how big our community was. So I don't know how many people were there at PorcFest this year, but like I said earlier in this show, everywhere I looked, I knew someone I knew. I ran into someone I knew, and so it was this constant like, "Oh, hi, how are you? Let's catch up." And then we were at the fire pit with like 15 of us, and it was people that I had several conversations with earlier in the year. So I was here for like 10 months at that point, and I already had an idea of like the personalities and what each person, I saw at least my perception of the person and how I positively saw them contributing to our community. And when I was going around in the circle, and when I think about building community, I really think it's important to focus on strengths, because as individuals, we all have strengths. And so when I was going around giving compliments, I really wanted to highlight everyone's strengths, because I think that's what makes our community so great.
Yeah, it really does. So what you said to me that day is in large part some of the inspiration for me deciding to do this venture with the podcast. You told me I was very good at talking to people and very good at articulating ideas and things like that. And genuinely, without that conversation, I don't know that I would have said yes to Caitlin when she asked me to do a show for the Think Liberty Network. And I'm very happy that that happened.
I'm happy that happened too.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts that you want to leave people with? Anything I haven't asked you about that you wanted to talk about? Or
honestly, now that we've been talking, I'm like, we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, we could.
There's a lot, and I think it depends who you are as a listener, what your vision is for the future, who you are as an individual. But I think if you care about the ideas of liberty, get involved one way or another, whether that's where you are now or picking up your bags and moving to be a part of the Free State Project, because the Free State Project is this once-in-a-lifetime experience that I am so glad I made the decision to move here, and I think a lot of people are glad. Some people come and go, and that's all right. That's part of life. But considering getting involved with the Free State Project, check out their website at fsp.org. I know I've said that a few times now, but it's that's only one way to do it. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier about be free. Like, you don't have to wait until government is abolished, because that's going to be a long time. I hate to break it to you, but don't wait until, we don't have time to wait either. So just do what you can now, little steps to be free in your everyday, in your present life, and find connections and build community, because that's how we're going to plant the seed. That's how we're going to plant the seeds of liberty.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, EJ.
Yeah. All right. I guess this is us signing off. All right.